Welcome today to webinar 8. Today we're looking at the NHVR portal digital asset management in this series, which is really covering, I know we started where we looked at what the project was about, and then we moved into all of those areas regarding a bit of an introduction to bridge assessment, and we're getting towards the end of this on this slide. If I just move on to the next slide. There we go. So here we are up to number 8 in the series. As I say, today our focus, we're going to be looking at some of the functionality that we've built in the portal to help managing the data and some of the processes that we've talked about in the earlier webinars in this series. So that's the plan for today. That'll be our focus. Presenters for today, so again, myself, Todd Willard, the project manager for the Strategic Local Government Asset Assessment Project, and joining me today is Daniel Watts, who is the business analyst with NHVR Solutions in corporate services here, and Dan will do a bit more of an intro when I hand over to him shortly. All right, so contents for today. So just a quick welcome. As I say, our focus really today is around looking at the functionality within the portal, and Dan's going to do a bit of an overview and a demo of that for you. And then at the end of the session, we'll be, as usual, going through questions and answers. So just to recap on the format of these, if you've got any questions along the way, just drop them into the chat, and at the end of the session, we'll go to those questions and try and answer those if we can. Otherwise, if we can't, we'll get back to you about those. If you haven't already, please mute your microphone so we don't get any unnecessary feedback. Now, this session, as with the other sessions, is being recorded, so that way we can watch them again, and they'll be sent out along with the slides that you're seeing right now. Now, if you're joining us for the first time, some of what we talk about today might be a little bit new to you, and you might not understand some of the terminology because we've probably covered that in earlier sessions. So if this is your first time joining us, make sure you go back and watch them in order, so that way you'll better understand as that content builds throughout the webinars. Right, and just finally from me, just a quick recap in terms of the Strategic Local Government Asset Assessment Project. We're doing a lot of work around building a road manager toolkit to help all road managers within this particular space. And of course, doing these webinars is part of that activity, and recording them, making them available outside of these sessions. But you'll see there on the right-hand side of the screen, that's our project website. You'll see the link to that, which we can drop into the chat as well, just so that you've got that there, nhvrengagementhub.com.au. So that's where all the project information is. If you haven't already registered, please jump on there and do so, and you'll get access to, as I say, all the project information, as well as the content and resources that we're building in the toolkit, including these webinars. All right, so without further delay, we might jump on and have a look at this, the focus of today's session, which is really around the NHVR portal and the digital asset management capability that we've built. So I'll hand over to Daniel. Morning, Daniel.
Morning, Todd. Thanks for that. And good morning, everybody. I'll just share my screen here.
I'll just unshare that, Dan.
Sure. Everyone see that okay? I'm assuming a yes. Yeah, my name's Daniel Watts. I'm a business analyst with the Digital Products Group, NHVR. I've been working in conjunction with Todd and the team to develop the Digital Asset Management Portal, which is specifically focused on recording asset information specific to the various LGAs. So today I'm just going to give you a walkthrough on the functionality of this tool. And as Todd said, we'll have any questions at the end. We'll try and answer those in this forum. So the first thing I want to do is just show you, some of you may or may not be familiar with the portal. The portal contains various tools used by the industry, whether it's PBS, access, accreditation, registration, soon to be compliance as well. So this is just one of those components. So logging into the portal, you'll be presented with these tabs. I may not have all of them displayed here. This is the UAT environment, but we'll click on the Assets tab. So what I'm going to do is give you a walkthrough on its functionality and show you how to upload attachments, etc. So going into the tab here, you can see we've got asset management. We've got provision to add a new asset. We've got the asset table itself, which contains multiple records. And again, I just want to stress this is UAT, so none of these are actually real records. You can see we've got an import data function. We can filter. We'll get into all this a bit later. We can show hide columns and change our views. So to start with, just get rid of that. We'll start with adding a new asset. So I'll go over the manual process first. So by clicking the add the new asset, you'll be presented with this, the gateway screen. Just a little bit of basic information as to what it's used for. And just letting you know that before you begin, all assets will be saved as draft until such time as an administrator within your LGA has viewed and activated those records and made sure all the mandatory fields are in place. So I'll hit the start button and we're presented with this screen here. So just along the top here, we can see that there's various tabs. One of those obviously is asset details. It's flashed highlighted in red because it hasn't been populated. We've got span details, spatial details, any attachments such as the assessment reports, a comments page and a review page. We'll get to that. So I'll start by manually entering a record here, and you can see here that straight away it defaults to draft. If you look at these fields for the assets, we've got asset name, type, ID, etc. And some of these fields actually have optional, so they're not actually a mandatory field. So we'll start by throwing an asset name in there. We can call it draft asset for the purposes of this exercise. We'll drop it down. We'll throw a bridge in there. We can throw whatever you like in there. Let's just call it ABC 222 as far as the road manager asset ID goes. And as I said before, these are optional fields, so you don't actually have to populate these right now. So you can throw a road name in there if you like. You can throw, throw your design standard in there, your articulation, etc. But for the purpose of this exercise, we'll just save that and move forward. You can see that toast message pop up there, asset details successfully updated. That will now appear in that table and we'll verify that a bit later. So moving on, we'll go to the next tab, which is the span details. Now, obviously with a bridge, it can be continuous, simply supported, etc. You've got span lengths there. So we'll just throw 25 meters for this one. You can have multiple by adding rows, 25. Fairly straightforward, moving through and saving as you go. You can see again, you get that green message saying it's been updated successfully, and you can move on to the next tab. So the spatial details tab is a specific location. It'll contain geo coordinates, which aren't currently there. So let's just throw in Brisbane. You can see from the drop-down list, you can be really specific and throw a street in there, and it'll provide you a list of where those streets appear in Australia, and you can select the specific one. Let's just go to Brisbane, for example. Now, we've got Albert Street. Now, let's say this bridge is on Albert Street, and you've got your geo coordinates there for Albert Street. Let's say we need to drag that to the specific location. We grab that pin, and we can drag it down to, let's say it stands here. And I don't know if you noticed, but the geographic coordinates also updated. And it's also updated the address bar. So as I said before, you can throw in a street address. You can make it specific to 122 Albert Street in this case, or you could drag and drop your pin to the specific location, which will update those geo coordinates. When you're happy with that, we'll save. Again, with our green message there, fantastic. And we can go to the attachments page. All right. Now there's just a bit of a warning. We didn't put a road manager in there to add attachments. Let's just go back to that page. And sorry, the first tab here, we'll just put in Brisbane as an example, Brisbane City Council. Again, so attachments, no problem there. We've got a road manager in there related to this record. So we've got a drag and drop function here. We've got our initial assessment report, which are the tier 1 to 3 assessments that have been done on various assets currently as part of the pilot phase. Now I can actually seek those out, or I can actually drag and drop, which makes it a nice handy feature. I'm just going to drag a file in here. And you can see there, just by dragging, the file is updated. We've got our green toast message, and you can see it's appeared there in this field here. Just worth noting that the file limit for this is actually 60 megabytes. We found that originally it was 20, but we've actually updated that to 60 given the length of some of these assessment reports. Down here, we've got a miscellaneous documents file as well. So a road manager can put in anything else related to that asset, whether it be construction details or forthcoming warnings, whatever they need to put in there that might be relevant for that specific asset. But it is optional, as you can see here. So we'll save that. And we move along in that tab to the comments tab. Comments again are optional. Again, it might be bridge under repair or painting, whatever is going to be specific to that asset, whatever is relevant, you can put it in there. We'll just throw some test info in there, and you've limited to 10,000 characters, which I'm sure you'll agree is probably more than enough. Save again. And finally, we come to our review page. So everything that we've input for that record manually will now appear here. You can see there's a few tabs. We've got our review, it's draft. We've got our draft asset, which is the asset name. We didn't change that. We've got our asset ID. We've got the type of structure. And given that this stuff's all optional, we did not actually populate this stuff here. But if you want to make that active, you probably will. We entered our spans. We've got 2 there with the measurements. And we've got our geo coordinates there with the address specific to that asset location. We've got our road manager account. And we've got our test info sitting in the attachments, or should be sitting in the attachments. In that case, something's missing there. You've got the opportunity to go back to that specific tab using the edit function prior to saving. So looks like we've lost our attachment here for some reason. I will try that again. I'll do it this way this time. Okay, it's in there. Let's save. It could be just a bit of a bug this morning, so hopefully it's going to stay. And it looks like we can't upload attachments at the moment. It is UAT again, so I'm not too stressed about that. Okay, when you're satisfied with everything here, you can save that record. I think we've already done that. And you can jump out. So now you can see here the next row that appears is the latest asset that we've input on that asset table. So there again, bridge ABC 222. There's the location, the geo point, and it's populated with the rest of the information that we put in there, as you can see. Now, that's a pretty time-consuming way to do it. It's great for a small number of assets, but we do have the facility there to do a bulk upload as well. So if you are dragging information out of your own database systems, you can actually import the data. So we'll go to the import data page, and you can see here, there's a download and use the template. So it's a CSV file. I'll just open that and show you right now. And there it is. And quite simply, it just contains all the headings that we just saw in the asset table. So that's fairly straightforward. I'll close that. I prepared one earlier just for ease of use. And just bear with me. Test file, excuse me. And there's the file that I want to do. It's a bulk upload file. Again, it's a drag and drop feature if you like, or you can search for it. Drag it in there, and you can see down here, you've got a preview function. So the information contained on that CSV file, there's only 2 records in this case, but it could go up to 200, which will make life a lot easier. And you can see that that's in there. And import. Yep, great. Fingers crossed we're going to get that green message saying that the records have been successfully updated. We have. And you can see here that the latest 2 appear at the top of the list. We've got White Lane and Yellow Street with whatever information was contained in that. In the event that your bulk upload is not successful for all records, you will get a message that says, 3 of 400, 3 of 100 failed to upload. Given the limited opportunity to use something like this, you'll have to go in there and work out which ones didn't actually upload. So there wasn't much point developing a beyond that, because it's something assets don't come across, built every day. So you'll be able to see, looking at your asset names, etc., and the details that you provided, which ones weren't successful. You'll have to go into that record and work out why, what field was missing or what was incorrect. But it's probably unlikely. All right, so that's the import data function. What I'll show you now is being able to filter. So you can see here that there's a lot of information contained on this view here, and some of it may not be relevant. Obviously, for culverts, there's a few other fields there, like fill depth, etc. So you can actually show and hide your columns here. It's a pretty handy feature. So just in this example, I'll just go down to the bottom there and make this view a little bit more user-friendly. And as you can see there, this is one view. I've removed the fields that weren't relevant to me. You can also filter for a search. You might have 200, 300, 400 assets in there. You can actually go through there and say, okay, I want to look at active, I want to look at culverts, for example, or whatever, and do your filtering that way. And it will drag culverts, in this case, 77 of them available for you to look at. Over here, we've got the add edit views. So this is a default view at the moment. You can add a view. So you want to have a look at culvert, for example. You can call it whatever you like. Hit the plus function there, the plus button, and you can see here that we've got culverts. Sorry, that's not right. Yeah, and then you can go and filter by culvert, save, and that is now your culvert view. Just to demonstrate, you can go back to default view, and you've got a big mixture there. If you go back to your culvert one that you just created, bang, we've only got culverts. So again, you can tailor that. I've just done it quite simply this time using just the structure itself, but you can really tailor that to whatever view you actually require. It's worth noting also that we have a view here. I'm just going to go to should have a view in this view. All right, just bear with me for a minute. I'm just going to drag something else up here. A different view. All right, we do get some information here that is presented on the route planner tool. And it's going to be a very handy feature for operators ultimately. So some of those asset details will appear here in basic form, certainly not everything, but I'll just go to the layers tab here and scroll down to the assets. You can see there, local government assets, tick that and zoom in, and that should hopefully display we're loading. I'll just do a refresh.
So just while you're waiting for that to load in there, Dan. So what we're looking at here is effectively the assessments that we did during the pilot for the SLGAAP project. So basically what we did, that was our first go at sort of starting to store this data and make it available to yourselves as road managers and also the operators. So you can see there the little yellow dots have appeared. So I'll hand back over to Dan.
Thanks, Todd. Yeah, sorry about that. A little bit slow there, but yeah, you can see here the yellow dots, having selected that layer in the route planner, have appeared. These are just the ones, as Todd said, that are currently populated in their pilot form. So I'm going to click on one of these in the hope that it's going to open up quickly. You can't help technology sometimes. Let's try this. There we go. So this is what generally happens when it's working correctly. You'll get some basic information there related to the asset. So that's going to be handy for the operator who are planning a route to actually see some basic information related to it. So it could be a timber bridge. They might be on a 150 ton vehicle. They might look at that and think, yeah, given the specs that are actually displayed here, and having said that, these are under review as well. So this is just basic at the moment. They might decide, okay, well, I might go around that because it's unlikely that I'm going to have received consent to access that particular asset. So it's just a little something there on the route planner, which is going to assist that. I'm going to go back to the asset management tool now. And I think that's probably pretty much all I can show you on this one at the moment. I'll hand back to you, Todd.
Thanks, Dan. If you can just unshare that, and I'll jump back to the presentation. Here we go. And I'll just drop that up again. All right. So, oh, Dan, did you just want to? I think we might have skipped this one.
Actually,
that's all right. But we can. I think we've covered all these things anyway. I think they're in your recap as well.
Yeah. Actually, one thing I do want to actually go over, guys, and I'm sorry about that. It was just the activating and archiving record function. I didn't cover that. My apologies.
Oh,
I'll
yeah, yep.
Share
Nice.
again.
Always good to have a checklist.
That's it. All right, so we'll go in here. We'll actually go to one of these ones. It's got a bit more information. Now, I highlighted before that by default it goes in as a draft message. So when the RM, who has administrative privileges, wants to go in there and activate that record, which means it will be presented in the route planner as well, that basic information, I should say. You can actually go in there and review this and make sure that everything is okay. We have no errors. Nothing's highlighted in red. And when you're satisfied that that information is true and correct, you can actually make that an active record. And okay, we've clicked active, and you can see here that we've got some red flags. So you're going to have to populate that. It's not going to let you activate a record without the mandatory fields having been completed. So overall length, for the example here, I'll just throw in something. What do we got? Overall width. You've got an inspection date here. Now there's a condition report. Let's just throw that in there, and we'll say that that's really good. And then you can save it. Spatial details in this case weren't included. Let's just put in 77 Skyring, which is where our office is. Skyring Terrace. There it is. I think it's right about there. There's our coordinates updating again. We can update our attachments, drag our tier 1 assessment in there. There it is. We've got our green flag. We can then go to our review. Everything's looking good, and you as a road manager are satisfied with that. Let's save it. Now, asset data has errors that could not be saved. So this is something that's built in there. We can see that we have some issues. Nothing's flagged here. We've got multiple spans, that's all in. We have that. Asset detail errors. It is active. All right, guys, I'm not too sure what that particular error is, but again, it's just technology, I think. I'm just going to go back and hopefully I would like to have seen an active record.
That's all right. I guess it's why we go through UAT to make sure it's all functioning properly, so it's serving its purpose, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. I'm just going to try one more time, guys, but it is UAT, as I said, and yeah, might be having a few bugs today. One more try. All right. I think I might have worked it out. My apologies, guys. Might be me. No, it's not. So, okay, we're having a few technical issues this morning. Apologies for that. But as I said, the road manager has complete authority here to activate a record and therefore make it displayable in the route planner. This doesn't usually happen. Okay, so yeah. So once you're happy with that, you can activate it. I know it's come up with active here, and that's precisely what ordinarily would appear here in the asset table. Instead of draft, you'll have an active record there. Having said that, you can also archive an asset. So if an asset was going to be decommissioned, you also have that archive functionality here. So if I wanted to just hit archive, as you can see there, and save it, I've got to put in a justification for that. So it could be decommissioned, for example. And confirm it's now an archived asset, and it's actually updated, so it's fantastic. We'll go back and we will see in the asset table, now it's an archived record. Now what that means is that's not going to be visible to the public, and you can actually unarchive that if you wanted to. So if it was safe temporarily being closed off for maintenance or whatever, you can archive it with that excuse, that rationale, and go back to it later on as a road manager and reactivate it. So that's pretty much it. Thanks, Todd. I'll hand it back to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Dan. I'll just jump back to the Prezzo and we'll just go over just the recap of the items you just covered there.
Sure.
We'll make sure we've got them all this time. So you've been at records can be entered manually or via the CSV template, which obviously, if you've got multiple records, that's clearly the preferred format, and all the fields are laid out there. And I think it's important just to recognise that the approach that we've taken here is based around the data that we need to undertake assessments. Okay, so you might remember if you've been involved in the SLAAP project and you've had assets assessed, the fields that you're seeing there is the data that we'd originally requested and basically what we provide to the engineers to do their modelling. So that's been our focus. Obviously, it doesn't contain all information about those assets, which you probably would have quickly recognised. Second one, records remain as drafts until they are reviewed and activated. Yep, I think Dan's covered that one off. Went around in circles a couple of times, but eventually worked. This is why we test these things. Road managers can only see assets situated within their LGA. So that's a pretty important one. And obviously road managers, as you said, Dan, is the administrator of that data for their LGA. So no one else can come in and play around with that information, which is an important information security feature. Asset data can only be updated by key stakeholders within their respective LGA. Yep, covered that. Route planner layer will assist operator route planning. Is there anything you wanted to add to that at all, Dan?
No, I think probably just with respect to the asset data can only be updated by key stakeholders. Obviously, the road manager works in a team as well. So while they may have the administrative privileges, they can also assign those privileges or that type of access to others within that team as well. So
yeah,
but I think just to stress, they're the only ones who can see their data.
Yep. And that functionality is consistent with how the portal works anyway, in terms of accounts and access to the consent requests and other information. So it's pretty much the same. There's no changes there really in terms of those permissions.
Yeah.
Excellent. Very good. So yeah, so I guess in summary, we've really built this functionality in the portal specifically around bridge and culvert assessments. As I said, that data that we're capturing is the data we need to undertake the assessments. And importantly, if you were in the previous webinars where we talked about where Neil Lake went through all the different, I suppose, 101 stuff around bridge assessment and the data we need. And I also talked about the rapid assessment tool capability that we're looking at building. That sort of data is absolutely key to feeding into that tool and getting it to do that rapid assessment. Without that data, obviously we can't do that on the fly, and we think that's really where it's going to benefit road managers, but also operators so that if they can use that tool, then hopefully they're not going to try and put vehicles down, over assets that they shouldn't. And that way they can select better routes for their travel prior to lodging the application, because as we know, the minute we have to go back for alternate routes or refuse applications, obviously that's when the process gets quite complex and there's wasted time and everything else. So we think if we can build that capability in upfront, all based around having this, this asset data, then it's going to streamline the process for operators, but also for road managers as well. So that's where we're hoping to get to with that. All right, thanks very much, Dan. That was really good. So very quickly, we're basically just about at the end of the session, but just to recap, next Tuesday, the 3rd of August, is our final webinar. So this one will be around pre-approvals for key routes. So we're just going to go through and just do a bit of an overview of how that process works. If you haven't already registered, jump in, there's the link there. And register for that. And if you haven't watched the other webinars, by all means, jump in and do that as well. All right, I'm just going to unshare that, and I'm going to jump back into our questions. We just see if we've got, I think we had a pretty early comment there from, who was that from Cliff Toms. Thanks, Cliff. Excellent initiative, however time consuming to upload data for all bridges and road segments. Yeah, no, you're right. Obviously, if we, and look, our experience in this space over the last 18 months is getting that data across all assets is a challenge. We've obviously focused on the ones that we're assessing, but what we're finding is that can be quite difficult to get, particularly for older structures. Not only that, we generally don't have the design drawings for these particular structures, so that's also a challenge. We understand that. I guess our focus at this stage is looking at having that data for the assets we're assessing and making sure that we capture that. So with the assessments that we're currently doing and that we'll do in the future, we'll as we collect that data, we'll be loading it into there. So that map that Dan showed you in the route planner that had, about 100 little yellow dots there, that's going to start to really populate out. So as we build that out, that'll make a difference. But what we wanted to do here was build that functionality to allow you guys as road managers and asset owners to input that data yourself. Now, if you've got it all nice and neat in a little spreadsheet like Dan had at his fingertips, great, pretty easy to do that. But if you don't, then it's a bit of a process to work through to get that data together. I guess in terms of where we're going in how we will use this and how it will benefit you, I think that investment in time to pull that data together, particularly for your priority assets. I mean, we're not talking about everything on the network, but our priority assets, your key heavy vehicle routes, your key arterial roads, etc., in your hierarchy, really important that we capture that data. So we know this is going to build over time. And obviously we'll try and help where we can. At the end of the day, it's your data, and we've given you the power to be able to load that data up and start to build that set out. Would NHVR accept uploading of a council asset inventory given the inventory appears to align with the NHVR database? Yeah, look, if that information is consistent, for sure. Yeah, as I said, and Dan showed you that table that was in there. Again, the data that we've got is really around the bridges and culverts. So any data that's additional to that, I suppose, is not going to fall into that particular CSV file. So it's probably going to fail the upload. So it'd need to be in that format. But having said that, like Dan said, the data that we've got there is just a starting point. So we can work with you guys to add or reduce that information as needs be. So Cliff, happy to have a further chat about that beyond this webinar if you like. But thank you, very good insights there, good questions. Anthony, great idea with asset management. It's always productive for users to see errors with the system and how the regular users overcome the mistakes. Yeah, for sure. And look, this is new. we've loaded some data ourselves. I don't think we've had really too many road managers in there trying to do this. So, we'd love you to have a go at it because, we haven't really put it through its paces other than some testing that we've done in-house. But the real challenge is when you start getting the user base using this sort of functionality. So by all means, jump in there and have a go at it. You can't really break anything. The worst you can do is that it won't upload. But of course, Dan and the team there can help with any issues that you might have in terms of that upload. So help is always at hand. Thanks, Anthony. Emily, will this data update the route planning tool to automatically avoid assets with load limits lower than the mass of the heavy vehicle? Yeah, good question, Emily. Good question. I guess there's a couple of things. The answer is, will it update the route planning tool to automatically? So that's a really good one. Look, and I guess I probably can't answer that question without mentioning the spatial program that NHVR is currently working on. So at the moment, and if you're familiar with using the route planner, look, it's a great tool, but there are some limitations in there. And I think we've all had some frustrations with having to reroute and whatever else. We're moving to a new spatial data set, and that's what drives the map that you see in the route planner. So we're replacing that underlying data set because the current spatial tools basically don't meet our needs. One of those is around how the routing works. So at the moment, the route planner, if you put a start and a finish, it basically routes by the shortest route. Now, we all know that when it comes to heavy vehicles, that's not the most appropriate way to do it because of the point that you're mentioning there. But also we've got networks for a lot of vehicles. So if you've got a B double network, you're wanting to put a B double on that particular route, you want it to snap to the B double network and use that network that's there for that vehicle, rather than just taking the quickest route. So that's a really good example of where we're trying to replace our spatial data set or our spatial tools in order to get some better routing capability there. Just quickly, and look, I don't want to go into it too much. We did talk about it in one of the earlier webinars. We did just touch on it, but the whole space around load limits, I think, is a bit of a tricky one. Neil Lake sort of, covered off on that briefly in that session, but we just have to be careful around how we utilise that and what it means, because the overall mass, as Neil pointed out in those sessions, may not be relevant. Where it may well be that because of the length of the vehicle, etc., the size of the asset, that it may well be that the axle loads are what's more important rather than the overall vehicle mass, and that is a case by case situation. So that's probably one we need to talk a little bit more about. But I think the key point there is about having better capability within our spatial tools to route correctly. So we're certainly working on that. There are a lot of sessions that are being held with stakeholders around this, and in fact, we did have Neil Lynch come into one of our early webinars and do a bit of an overview. So we do have some information there. So if you go back and watch those earlier webinars, you'll see a bit more information about that spatial program. Thanks, Linda, for dropping in that link or those links. That's great. So if you haven't already, jump in and click on that link to register for the webinar, the final webinar. And Carly, hello, Carly. Did you want to talk to this quickly at all? I think you're
yeah.
still.
Hi, guys. I just want to let you know that when you're logged in now to the portal, we've turned on chat support for road managers and anyone with a .gov email address. So when you're logged into the portal, in the bottom right-hand corner, there will be a grey chat icon. This will allow you to talk to the DPG team for any direct support you need when utilising that tool. And we've also got the ability to link through any help articles or additional resources there. So if you have any feedback when using the tool, we'd love to hear from you. Our response time is pretty quick. So I think our service level agreement is we get back to you within 24 hours, but our response time is sub 1 hour. So you should hear from someone pretty fast. And yeah, we look forward to, hearing any direct feedback when you're using the tool.
That's really good, Carly. Thank you for that. So again, guys, as I was saying earlier, jump in and have a go at loading some of your asset data in there. And again, if you've got any issues there, support is at hand. So click on that little grey chat icon in the bottom corner there, and you'll get some assistance in doing that. But it also is important in giving us that feedback as well. All right, that looks like we're at the end of the questions there. So thanks very much, everyone. I'll just throw on the screen again just a quick reminder about our next and final webinar in this series, pre-approvals for key routes. The link is in the chat, so please jump in and register if you haven't already. So that just about wraps it up. So I'd like to thank Dan Watts for joining us today and helping out, giving an overview of the digital asset management functionality in the portal. Thanks, Dan. I think we might see you appearing in another series with how you performed today. Well done, even though the system tried to give you a bit of grief. And look, yeah, good on you. Thanks, mate. And thanks everyone for attending again today. And we'll catch you in the next webinar. Thanks again, and bye for now.